A quick save. And again, because of the mutual dependencies, these will have to be activated together. So we choose the course, we choose the schedule, we right click, or choose our choose activate here, or as I mentioned earlier, there's also activate up in the top in the menu bar. Make sure that both of them are going to be activated because of the mutual dependency, and then activation. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the progress of the activation. When that finishes, then you know they're activated. Also, when inactivated, there's a special icon that appears on the element, but once activated, that icon disappears. Okay. So now our next level in our RESTful application programming model is what's known as a metadata extension. A metadata extension is just simply some additional annotations that I could put in the CDS itself, but instead I will put them in a separate artifact, which can make the code a little easier in terms of the annotations to read. Again, the annotations can go up at the top, or the annotations could be attached to a field if they're field level annotations. They can always go in the CDS, but they can also go in a separate artifact, again, to make them a little bit easier to read. So we'll demonstrate that. So we'll come to Core Data Services, and this time we'll do a new metadata extension. And there we go. So our first one will have the same name as the CDS view in which the metadata extension will apply to. Choose our transport request. And again, we'll be annotating a view. And the annotations we'll now copy in. So these annotations will be evaluated by our Fiori Elements UI application that we're going to be demonstrating shortly. The annotations are UI in their nature. So as you can see here, for example, header information. So type name singular is course, type name plural is courses, title course ID, and etc. You'll also notice here, there's a field that the CDS actually has in the output, but the annotation says to go ahead and hide that field so the end user would not actually see it on the output. So things like that can go in a metadata extension. We'll need a second one. So new metadata extension. Copy our name. Put in the name, schedule info. And then finish. Copy over our information. Similar to the first metadata extension for the first course consumption CDS view, this one again will contain annotations that will be evaluated by the Fiori runtime, and that will affect how the UI is rendered for the user. So for example, the schedule UUID field will be hidden. Course begin will be the first field on the output, as you see line item here. Location will be the third field. I take that back. Trainer will be the third field, position 30. Location will be the second field. The annotations can go before or after the field, so you look for the semicolon in this case. Since the semicolon is located on line 30, then we know the annotations on line 28 and 29 apply to it. Similarly, we see the semicolon on line 35, and therefore the annotations on line 32 and 33 apply to it. So the metadata extensions are here. You'll notice the icon It's hard to see, it's very small, but it's a little yellow icon that tells us that the artifacts are not activated yet. So we'll choose them both. And then again, we have our activate button right here. Oops, looks like one has not been saved yet. Let's do a cancel, although I could have saved at that point. But the save button is here, and there's a save all button right next to it. Let's do save all just to be safe. And then we will repeat our process. Select, and then activate all, confirm that both are there, and then activate. Okay. So the final artifact that we now need to create is something called a service definition. What a service definition will do is expose these artifacts as an OData endpoint so they can be used in a Fiori application. So we'll copy our name to get it ready. And then we'll create our service definition. So new. Service definition appears in the new ABAP repository pop-up under Business Services. Service definition. We click Next, put a name, and then service definition. Click Next. Confirm our transport. Again, we have prepare code. So click Finish. And then get that information ready. You'll notice looking at the code, so we're going to define a service definition, and then we're going to expose as an OData entity set. We're going to expose course information, which is based off of this CDS view, schedule information, which is based off of this CDS view, country information based off of this CDS view, and finally, currency information based off of that CDS view. So finally, after the service definition, we will create a service binding. The service binding will be based off of the service definition. We can save ourselves a little work by right-clicking directly on the service definition and then choosing a new service binding. This way it'll automatically know that that service binding is based off of this service definition. For the binding type, notice we have several options. What we will choose is OData version 2 UI. There's the service definition that it's based off of, and then finally the name. So we will call this Z, and then service binding SB underscore course underscore OSAP 1. And again, this is the service binding. Hit next. Let's see, an active version does not exist. Yes, forgot to activate. No problem. We'll just click cancel real quick. You'll see the little icon telling us that we've not activated. And then, of course, we'll click the activate button right there. Wait until it activates. And then, as they say, wash, rinse, repeat. So right click, new service binding, and let's do it again. Our names are now in memory, so we can just choose them. Reselect the binding again. And now it should be happy. Transport request. And there we go. That's our service binding. Okay. So again, the service definition describes what is going to be exposed as an OData endpoint, what specific entity sets, meaning what specific data. The service binding, which is very closely related to it, is now how is it going to be exposed? Do you want to use Web API? Do you want to use OData version 2, OData version 4? Once this is done, we'll activate, or actually, And then once the activation is done, it's a slightly extra step, or one extra step that is needed, which is a publish. Since a URL is generated based on the service binding, that URL has to be whitelisted, and the publish does that. Once the publishing is done, we'll actually see the URL. And we will be patient while it continues to publish. Sometimes this happens very quickly, other times it can take a little bit longer. And it is done. You will notice the service URL, which is right here. And then you'll see the entity sets that are exposed: country, currency, course, and schedule. Takes that directly from the service definition, which is right here. Again, you'll see a snippet of the URL, which is here, where it says service URL. If you click on it, you will actually be able to see the entire URL that appears in the web browser window right there. Okay, so our final step now is to go ahead to finish our end-to-end, to actually look at a UI application that will be based off of this. Luckily, we have a preview. You would actually, to build your UI application, you at this point shift over to the Business Application Studio using this URL and then design a Fiori application. You could use Fiori Elements or Freestyle as your choice. So for our purposes, we can just use the preview. That'll give us enough of an idea of what the UI will look like. We click on Preview. It opens it up. And there we go. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll put some columns in our output. So we'll do a select all. And then we'll click go. And then we will actually see our data. So country information, in terms of the key, the region name, ISO code, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that concludes our demo for Unit 6, how to do side-by-side extensions. It also includes our openSAP course, Introduction to ABAP in the Cloud. It was a pleasure to have you.